With the release of the Galaxy S21, Samsung finally has a flagship for under $800. And there are a lot of very compelling things about it that might make it worth it. But Samsung already released a very compelling flagship for under $700 with the Galaxy S20 FE last year. The S20 FE was the entry-level version of the S20 series from last year, and in many ways has a lot of similarities to the S21. But should you still consider the S20 FE with the S21 in the picture? Let's talk about it. This is NOISO, and this is the S21 versus the S20 FE. In terms of design, these two devices look like they were cut from the same cloth. Smooth, flat backs that curve gently into pretty thick metal frames with flat fronts and single hole punch cutouts as the only mar to what is otherwise full screen displays. Although both of these devices have plastic backs, I really don't mind it. Visually, it doesn't look significantly worse than glass, and I actually appreciate the fact that it's not super glossy to attract fingerprints. I will say that the S21 has a slightly larger metal frame that allows you to grip onto it a little bit easier, and that in combination with a smaller footprint makes this easier to hold in one hand, but generally both of these phones fit comfortably in my hand. The S20 FE sports slightly larger bezels, but also a significantly larger screen at 6.5 inches as compared to the 6.2 inches that you have on the S21. And of course, the S21 also has the new camera layout, which allows for the camera bump to kind of cleanly curve into the frame of the display, which looks incredibly modern and kind of stylish, but otherwise these two devices are very similar. Personally, I prefer the mint green color palette of the S20 FE, and I didn't really see any unique colors on the S21 that really caught my eye. I thought the white and silver color palette was nice enough for me, but it wasn't quite as striking for me as the S20 FE. The two displays also have a lot in common, both being 1080p with up to 120Hz refresh rate. The S21 does have a variable refresh rate, meaning that it can go as low as something like 40Hz to save on battery life. In practice, I found that both of these phones got around 7 hours of screen on time, although I do need to have more testing on the S21 before I can come to a conclusion. But generally, I found that both have the ability to stay awake for a day and maybe two depending on use. The performance of both with the 120Hz feels incredibly fast and responsive. The Snapdragon 888 is supposedly faster than the 865 in the S20 FE, but in practice I found that both are incredibly fast and capable. I do occasionally get some lag here or there on the S20 FE that I don't get on the S21, but it wasn't noticeable enough or frequent enough to really bother me. And frankly, I don't think performance is really going to hold either of these devices back. Finally, let's talk about one of the biggest differences between these two phones, the camera layout. Both of these on the back have 3 cameras with a standard telephoto and wide-angle lens. Interestingly enough, the S21 actually doesn't have a true telephoto lens. Instead, it has a single high megapixel count sensor that then is in post digitally cropped in order to achieve a 3x zoom or anything more than that. In practice, both these devices produce absolutely stunning photos that consistently were above my expectations. Now, frankly, I had gotten used to great photos on the S20 FE, and I wasn't really that much more impressed with the S21. There were instances in low light and especially telephoto low light that I noticed that the S21 did have the edge, but in most cases I really didn't see big differences between these two phones. Just take a look at the photos that I have side by side here. Now, when you do zoom in, you might be able to tell that the S21 has less grain in some photos, but at least when you just look at it full screen, I really didn't tell a significant difference between these two phones, and generally both of them are incredibly impressive when it comes to taking any sort of pictures. While it's not usually a big selling point for me, I will say that the high megapixel count front-facing camera on the S20 FE did perform significantly worse than the S21 in the few photos that I did take. And so generally, if you are taking a lot of selfies, then you will see the extra benefit of going with the S21, its 10 megapixel front-facing sensor. Let's get to the bottom line. I was really excited when Samsung announced the S21 for $799 because it meant we're finally stepping down from the $1,000 price point that we've gotten familiar with. Hopefully in just a few short years we'll be back to $600 flagships, but we'll have to see if that happens. Until then, I think this is a great option for the price point, and I'll go into full detail in my full review. But considering that you can get the S20 FE for several $100s less, I really don't know if this is the better option, considering how great the S20 FE was. The S20 FE competes with the S21 in terms of design, experience, performance, and even camera performance, which is pretty amazing considering how low you can get this in terms of price. But keep in mind that $799 is the price before promotions or discounts. And so effectively, you might be able to get the S21 for $600. I personally got it for around $550 with pre-order discounts and trade-ins, which means that at $600, I would choose this over the S20 FE any day. So then I leave it to you to get the best price that you can possibly get for both of these phones, and then make a determination based on that. Personally, I think I'm going to go with the S21 because effectively I got it for just $100 more than the S20 FE, and as a result, I'm getting a new processor, more modern cameras, hopefully a little bit better, and hopefully another extra year of software updates. For that, I think I'm willing to pay $100, and it looks like the S20 FE is going to be my trade-in for the S21. This isn't quite the last video that I'm doing on the S20 FE because there's one more video coming up of season 2 of my phones under 500 comparison, where it's going to compete with other great mid-range phones for the crown of the best phone under $500. And of course, coming up soon, we've got the full review of the S21, so be sure to get subscribed if you want to catch either of those videos. So if you're not already, be sure to get subscribed. Let me know down in the comments which one of these you think is the better deal. And thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.